Well, hey everybody, it's DRDRAKE 63 here today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about testing out 3 different shotgun slugs of the non-sabot variety. These are rifled, meant to be smooth, shot out of a smooth-barreled shotgun, 12 gauge. We're going to take a look at the Federal, which is a 3-inch, 1 1/4 ounce muzzle velocity of 1,600 feet per second. We're going to look at the Remington Slugger 3-inch Magnum. That's also a 1 ounce projectile. And that goes at a cool 1,760 feet per second. Kind of see what's going on with the ballistics there. And last but not least, we're going to look at the Winchester 12 gauge. Also a 3-inch shell. Also a 1 ounce rifled slug, that's what it looks like. And that's also going at 1,760 feet per second. So the Winchester and the Remington boast the same statistics. This Federal, a little bit heavier, and it's going a little bit slower. All 3-inch slugs, and we're shooting them out of a new shotgun we just picked up this last week. This is the Benelli Supernova. This is a 12 gauge shotgun that can accommodate up to a 3.5-inch shell. And this is a tactical version, so it has a short barrel compared to say a standard shotgun. What you see in the back, this is a semi-auto in the back. And if we want to line up the receivers and get an idea, quite a bit more barrel on this CZ. That's a semi-automatic shotgun, like I said, and there's a big difference when you start talking about taking length off the barrel of a 12 gauge shotgun and making it a pump versus a semi, and what kind of recoil you get, and we'll visit that in a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about these 3 shells just a bit. So, looking at the 3 of these cartridges, this is the Federal. And it's a rifled slug, which means that I'm going to borrow Winchester's picture here for a second. You can see that there are grooves cut into the side, and it has a hollowed point, okay? So it's going down a smooth barrel, but those rifle grooves supposedly help stabilize it and have the same effect that a rifle would. And you can see these are the same size. Here's the Slugger Magnum, okay? And same thing. Now this is 1 ounce, this is 1 1/4, and then the Winchester, they've got their nice little logo stamped on it. And as we talked about earlier, identical on paper statistics to the Slugger from Remington, okay? Now, what you're looking at here is a 7.62 by 51 NATO round, also known as .308. This bullet here weighs 150 grains. Now I'll do some quick math for you. What does this mean? It means this 1 1/4 ounce slug weighs 551 grains. Okay, 551 at a pretty dang large caliber bore, versus 150 grains here. These two with the 1 ounce are 441 grains. 441 grains flying out of a shotgun at a velocity of 700 or 1,700 plus feet per second, almost 1,800. And here's the big difference. This is a magazine that would work in an AR-10. This particular one goes in a Galil, which is an Israeli AK type design. It's got a big, robust spring that is part of the operating mechanism that cycles the next round. So it absorbs a lot of that shock. If you look at this firearm right here, this semi-automatic shotgun, the gases operate in such a way is that it pushes a big spring back. So as you can see, there's this big honking spring right here that the gases go in this port and force back for the next round. Now it's kind of hard for me to do one-handed, but you can see how this moves, okay? So if you fire a 3-inch round, something with heavy ballistics like one of these 3-inch lead slugs, this spring's gonna absorb a lot of that recoil. So just to remember for everybody, for Newton's third law, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So when all the force from one of these big old honking shells drives the spring back, reloads the next shell, and a semi-automatic shotgun, or in the case of a bullet, it absorbs a lot of that. So you don't get a lot of felt recoil. However, when you're shooting a pump action shotgun or a bolt action rifle, for example, you're going to get it all because there's no place for it to go. This is a manually cycled. There's no mainspring. There's no recoil spring. There's nothing. So that's kind of why I get a kick when I hear guys talk about, oh, you know, lots of recoil on an AR or any recoil on an AR, or talking about recoil with their 7.62 by 39 AKs. If you hear somebody talking about recoil with one of those firearms, that's a real good hint that they have very little experience firing guns, because those guns don't contain any kind of recoil. Why am I doing this whole build-up to this? Taking first shots with this, it's been a long time since I've fired slugs, especially 3-inch slugs, out of a shotgun that isn't semi-auto and gonna handle a lot of that recoil. So this sucker kicks like a mule, and it's really good that there is this pad here. It helps. I also kind of learned, not being used to using a handle on a shotgun, to apply some back pressure on this grip. It does help quite a bit mitigate the recoil. But I will tell you right now that without a doubt, and I don't know why, because on paper it shouldn't be this way, the Winchester kicked the hardest out of the three. Number 2 was the Federal, which I kind of would have expected. It's firing a heavier projectile. 551 grains going 1,600 feet per second, and the only thing it has to do is shoot backwards into your shoulder. And the third lightest amount of recoil, and the lightest, and I thought the easiest to shoot and most controllable, was the Remington Slugger, which, like I said, on paper has identical ballistics to the Winchester. So we don't quite know how that works, but that was just what I imagined today. But in all, I shot 35 3-inch slugs today, and I was ready to quit after about 10. But because I'm making a video, I decided to man up and see if we couldn't just keep going. And you'll see from my shooting results, it's not what you'd expect to see from somebody who shoots as much as I do, but I'm going to have to raise my hand right now and just admit I am not a slug shooting shotgunner. It's not an area of great expertise for me, so I found this to be very instructive today. Always excited to go to the range, even if it's an indoor range. Preference, obviously, is being able to shoot out to greater distances, minimum 100, usually like 200 and more, so obviously a rifle guy here. But the indoor range has to do, especially when we're having unusual weather for April. We're seeing temperatures in the mornings below 20 degrees and windy, and shoot, we got 8 inches of fresh snow here in Minnesota this last week, so have to make do with what you have. But when it comes to shotguns, 50 yards, which is the limit of the indoor range where I shoot, is plenty. 50 yards is more than enough because, quite frankly, when I'm shooting a shotgun, typically that's the range I'm looking at, if not closer. Today we're going to be shooting, as I mentioned, the slugs, and these are going to be at their most effective performance under 100 yards, especially for the smooth bore slugs that are rifled, the non-sabot slugs. And more than realistically, if I were to use these in either a hunting or self-defense situation, it's going to be more like 50 yards or less. So it's a pretty true test of what these slugs are going to do. Overall, I found that the function of the gun was very nice. It loaded well, and it takes, when you take the stop out of the tube, it's a rifle that will take 4+1 of these 3-inch shells. I did short cycle it a couple times, but that's just getting used to this particular gun. You kind of see I'm really leaning into that, and you can see as I'm taking these shots that it's really driving me back. Again, there's no place for this force to go other than straight back into my shoulder. So it was quite the deal. Eesh. That's not normally there. Those are broken blood vessels, so definitely something not used to there. I felt every one of those shots today. I won't lie to you guys. I hate to sound like a Sally here, but the truth of the matter is 12 gauge with a 3-inch slug, 18-inch barrel, bam. So first up was at Winchester, and you can see a pretty decent group up off to the right a little bit. That wasn't because I needed to adjust the windage. It was more an issue of getting used to the trigger, but the elevation needed to be adjusted, so we figured out how to do that. It's all done on the back sight, and after cranking that down, we're able to get better results. But you can see I'm already starting to anticipate the recoil. Here is the Federal, and these were sailing high. I made a few more adjustments on my windage as well as understanding the sight picture and got those down, but they just shot higher. When we went to the Remington, we were getting pretty good groups and also learning how to shoot the gun and not anticipate the recoil as much. Pleased overall with the results at 50 yards. As you can see, I don't have windage issues. And as far as going after a man-sized target, a bear-sized target, something like that, I'm going to be pretty good to be right on. So today was a little bit about firearm evaluation, getting used to doing something a little bit different. And you know, I've got enough experience with the shotguns that certainly if I'm going to go out and shoot buckshot, shoot shells that aren't the big ones and things of that nature, it's going to be a lot easier to fire this. So I don't want to scare anybody off. If the first time you go shoot a firearm, you're going to put the biggest loads and the biggest ballistics challenge in terms of recoil, then you might not be making the best decision. But I really bought this particular firearm for the self-defense purpose, for the purpose of defending my home, and also for the cool factor, I'm not going to lie. So we're going to continue to learn on this particular type and style of a firearm, as well as utilize this grip to help mitigate some of this recoil, so I'm not taking it all on the shoulder. Other things that can be done on a situation like this, strongly recommend shooting 2 3/4-inch slugs. They make them. They're not quite as powerful, and if you're going to do a lot of shooting, that's a good suggestion to save your shoulder. But it's also an experience thing. But weather gets a little bit nicer here. We'll take this outdoors, shoot some targets with buckshot and birdshot and things like that. But overall, a lot of fun. I'm not complaining about the kick to the shoulder, but it is a lot different. I've been shooting a heck of a lot of semi-automatic rifles lately, and when you do that, you get a little bit spoiled because, as mentioned, that big spring takes a lot of that recoil out of the equation, and you can just focus on the accuracy. But we're going to keep you up to speed with what we're doing with this particular gun. I like it. I'm very interested in Benelli's M3 and M4 versions, which are semi-automatic, and of course would be a lot easier and fun to shoot with some of these heavier loads. They aren't cheap guns, though. I've seen them well over the $1,500 to $2,000 range. So you're talking about a gun that you need to save your pennies for. But I appreciate you watching this particular video today. As always, I hope that you will support the National Rifle Association. It's an American institution, and it's one of the main reasons that I can go by and shoot something like this today. And I'd really hate to see myself or any of you watching, as well as our offspring and future generations,
lose the ability to enjoy what we do today. Whatever you do, make sure you vote. Thanks again for watching. This is DRDRAKE 63 saying goodbye.